This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. The music in the background that you're listening to is called Enough by Jeff Brisbane. And I think when we start presenting our guest today and hearing her backstory and where she has sort of landed as of now, I think we're going to understand that Jessie Torres has been a witness to pain and trauma that she now is using as almost a guiding light to move forward. When I read her bio on Podmatch, it was almost like I had flashbacks of things that have happened to me in my life. Not exactly the same, but just enough that you say, oh my gosh, I've been there.
Mhm.
So how did I end up here? And sometimes we don't even know. Sometimes we don't even care to know. But I think it's important that we share our stories because there are too many people who are walking around hugging onto their story because they think that they're the only one who's ever been hurt. So, Jessie, welcome to Avoid the Maze and give us a little bit of
Thank you so much.
background.
Thank you, Karen. I'm super excited to be here. And thank you for the privilege to speak to your beautiful audience. So a little bit of background. Oof, that's a little bit of a loaded question, but I'll make it as concise as possible. So I am just an average girl, the daughter of two Peruvians who came here from Peru and taught themselves how to speak English. Had my brother, had me. And in the context of our journey, there was, abuse with my father. There was, I got married at 18 to run away from my father and met someone who recognized what was happening in my family and was the first person to ever call it out after I tried to tell my mom what was happening. And so I felt instantly in love because, well, he loves me with all my dirty, like
Right.
nobody, I had anchored the belief that no one would ever love me now that I've had this happen to me. And when he did, I fell head over heels. So my mom being the very good Catholic said, I wanted to leave and move in with him. And she said, if you love him that much, then my daughter's not going to live with a man and not be married. So I moved out Monday. We were married Friday. And from that, I think he asked me that morning because we were both just kind of like, okay, let's do this. We're in love. I love you. You love me, right? He was 21. I was 18. And, and so we did. And what we didn't know is that he had been through his own abuse with an alcoholic mother. He was the youngest of four. He was the only boy. And I had my sexual abuse with my father. And we talked about it openly. And so we thought, okay, so he said, my kids will never see me drink. And I said, my kids will never be molested. And we thought we fixed it. Right. And so we enter a marriage not understanding or knowing the emotional consequence of living with that. So subsequently, 18 years of marriage, 3 kids later, what we didn't know was the emotional. So my dad could be volatile. He only knew how to speak to his mother with rage because that's just what she called him, a loser every day. You know what I mean? And so that was their communication. And my dad similarly, was threatening and that kind of thing. So it matched, right? But it ended up getting and becoming so bad that I was codependent. I was, making sure that there was nothing, like there was no Coke can on the counter so that he doesn't explode and get mad. And so it was this hyper vigilant life. And I promised him that I would never leave him. He never believed he deserved me. And I promised him I would die in the marriage. And I believe I did. I died in every way that a human being could. I was apathetic. I was praying that somebody would blow the red light so I could be done. And it just got to that point. And I do want to preface that when I do speak of my ex-husband, that I have nothing but love for him. And, you know, there's tons of forgiveness. And I'm grateful that we brought these three beautiful humans to the world. But coming out of that marriage, I did not know who I was. I was 38 at the time and didn't even know what my favorite color was. All I knew was to be the good girl and to be everything that he needed me to be.
Sure.
And so now I'm like, who am I? And I was desperate. It was very, he was very angry. So it was a very painful divorce. You know, lives were threatened. I would sleep on the parking lot of the church just to not go home because that would make him explode again. So it was a very volatile. And I knew I needed to do something. I was a scared girl. I barely left my home. I looked down at the ground. I didn't make eye contact. I didn't, you know, speak to anybody. So I started to read. I wanted to understand, you know, why did my dad do what he did? Why did my mom ignore it? Why did my husband do what he did? And why did I allow it? And I started with an unsatiable hunger to understand human beings. And I started to read books, started to go to workshops, seminars, you know, anything that would help me. I was so scared. I even took an improv class just to get me out of my shell because I was so terrified. So one of the things that I learned in the process is if it scared me, I knew I had to do it. And I would challenge myself to do that. And ultimately that led me, I worked for 15 and a half years in the corporate arena, and then ended up deciding that I wanted to be a coach. Through my own therapy, my therapist said, you know, you should be a coach, because I said, I want to do what you do, but that's a lot of school and a lot of years.
Yeah.
and she said, you should be a coach. And this was back in 2006. Sorry, my alarm. You know, I was like, soccer coach? Like, I didn't understand what that was. This was 2006, where it didn't, you know, really wasn't mainstream. And so I looked into it, and I literally robbed Peter to pay Paul. I think I even asked my mom for help. And I went to Coaches Training Institute to become a coach. And as you learn to be a coach, you actually coach yourself. You go through it. And so I just fell in love with understanding humanity and why we make meaning around things and cause limitation. Subsequently, to kind of wrap it up, I did my training there. I was still working full time, trying to do my practice after hours, which was really tough. And I decided to go to a Tony Robbins event. And my sister, who was in real estate, got a ticket, and so we went. I had no idea what it was, and it blew my mind. And I fell in love, and I started to be in that community, going to as much as I could. And I finally turned in my resume and became a Tony Robbins coach. So I coached for 6-7 years, and what that gave me was the ability to coach people from all over the world.
Sure.
Right. So now it doesn't matter. You start to learn patterns in human behavior. It doesn't matter where you come from. And so it gave me a huge opportunity. And since then, I have also been on my own spiritual journey to help myself. So I went to India, got meditation instructor. I'm also a trainer for the Institute of Heart Math, which talks about heart and brain coherence. You know, and I just started to put things in my path that wanted me to evolve into the next level of coaching. It's not coaching. To me, it's a spiritual awakening. It's really connecting to the congruence and the authenticity of source or God or whatever you believe, that is telling our heart to beat. And how can we come back to the beauty and the divinity that we are before we made meaning about who we think we are? Because I don't believe there's any limitation to the human being, only the belief that there is one. And so I've been on this path, and I love what I do. The greatest thing is to see someone fall back in love with who they are.
And, you know, that's probably the most important thing that I want everybody to get out of this, is that you have to fall in love with who you are. I know growing up, everything was, you know, well, you love your family, you love your parents, you love your siblings, your cousins, because you're sort of told that you love these people.
Right.
And then you keep waiting for somebody to fall in love with you. And I know with my first marriage, that's what I was waiting for.
Mm,
I want some guy to sweep me off my feet and really, really love me. Um, and I wasn't in a situation nearly as bad as it sounds like you were in. Uh, but it was verbally abusive. And
mhm,
I thought I deserved it.
right.
And there are so many people out there who do believe that they deserve other people to abuse them with words, physically, emotionally. Um, and the reality of it is, we don't deserve it. They don't have the right to do it. But sometimes we have to move away from them. And I love when you said that there's forgiveness for your husband, because I forgive my ex husband. A lot of years, I hated him. But I, I have forgiven him because he came from a different culture.
Yeah.
He saw it happening. Okay. You know, I look back and I say, hey, I saw that happening in his house. Didn't I expect it would come into our house someday? But I didn't. And I think that when you decide to heal yourself, many of us turn to coaching
Mhm,
because we don't want that therapist to tell us what to do.
right.
And I will tell you, I'm sure there most of our listeners have said, well, I've gone to therapy because my insurance pays for it,
Mhm,
but I didn't get anything out of it. And I turn around and tell them, you have to consider coaching. No, your insurance is not going to pay for it. But you're going to learn about yourself through your own words. And
yeah.
that's what I was hearing you in your backstory, learning from your own words.
Well, I think what's so important, Karen, in what you're saying is that we're just not taught. We're not taught. We say, the past doesn't equal your future. And I'm like, it absolutely can. We're just not taught to find the beauty. We're taught to remember the pain. And so I believe anybody listening has gone through their own trauma. And
Right.
trauma doesn't have to be a gigantic thing. It could be a small thing. It doesn't matter. It's a shift in mindset and believability that you are this beauty, this divinity, this magnificence, right? And if we can go back and look at somebody, even myself, if I look back and I see this little girl, because for years I condemned myself. I used to say I should have kicked, I should have screamed, I should have spit, I should have peed myself, I should have whatever. I should have done more to get away. And it's like my dad didn't punish me when he didn't get his way. He would punish my mom and my brother. And so as a little girl, I took that on as my responsibility. And so if I fought him off, they would be hurt. And so I just sucked it up. But now I grow up and I'm like, oh, you should have done more. And I judge myself. So when I think about my past, I think about how my innocence was taken. I think about how my dad, he was so awful and how could he do that? Or I can go back and witness a beautiful little girl that got back up and still chose to be kind, even having gone through that, still chose to want to be something in the world, still chose to have resilience enough to wake up the next day. In the same aspect of being a little girl afraid in the middle of the night because her dad was going to come in the room, I also created traps. I was very resourceful, very, creative, and they sometimes they stopped them, but most of the time it didn't. But it made me feel better. So I can honor the resourcefulness, the creativity, the bravery, because that is also true. It's just not what we're taught to see.
Absolutely. Um, it's very strange because I feel so, so blessed that I grew up in a home where um, when my parents would argue, um, it was loud and then it was over. And there were hugs and kisses afterwards. I think they yelled at each other. Um, it was more of a cultural thing. I just want to be heard, so I'm going to keep raising my voice. And
Mm.
so, but what I remember all that, but I remember the loving and the kindness. My parents never, other than spanking us on our bottom when we were bad, there was no physical abuse. Um, so I grew up knowing what a loving family could be. Uh, and yet I look around and I hear so many of our listeners who are in situations very similar to what you were in. And even with all the help that is out there today, many are still so afraid to go for help. If you would have known there was help when you were younger, do you think you would have turned to it?
Yes. But your point is so important. I didn't even know to look.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I think we're talking back in, 2003 was when I actually got divorced. Um, now the internet, there's vast information. Coaching is now kind of more mainstream.
Right.
There's definitely a lot more information. Back then, I just knew my world. And so what I want to share with your listeners is that, reach out. It's like you don't have to go it alone. Nobody goes it alone. Nobody goes it alone. No matter who you honor or respect or you look up to, somebody believed in them. Somebody might have said one word that got them to actually take action. So you don't have to go it alone. And so speak on it. Shame lives in secrecy. And shame was my emotional home for many years. And so you don't talk about it. You don't express that because it's shameful to be in shame,
Absolutely. Yep.
And so you just keep it quiet and you isolate and you think you're the only one going through it. You think your mindset starts to tell you you're this icky thing and you don't want to tell anybody because what will they think of you? And we live our lives, what I call with heart armor that we put around our heart to protect us because we've been hurt before. So now I need to show up as this version of me so that you'll like me or accept me or won't hurt me, or this version or this version or this version. And we move away from our beautiful essence and the divinity of who we were and who we were created to be. And so I want to invite you all that right in this moment, you are divine perfection. Right in this moment. It doesn't matter what happened to you. If you think about it, I had a girlfriend who had a baby and his name was Timothy and he was 6 days old. And I'm holding him and I'm looking at him and I'm like seeing his little knuckles and I'm just like, oh my gosh. And my mind goes divine perfection. And I thought, what makes us any different than that infant? Only the belief. That's it. We are the divinity that we were when we took our first breath. Everything else is just the armor that we've built to protect ourselves because we were hurt. And this is just a human condition. Like, the minute we go to kindergarten and somebody takes our lunchbox, we anchor not enoughness. Why don't they like me? Why are they being mean? I want to be part of the team. Why am I, and we start to create those mindsets. Like we're meaning making machines. We make meaning out of those things and we don't know, we're just human beings. And so our parent can tell us, oh, well, they give us whatever reason, but then the next day you're more guarded, you're protecting your lunch pail, and now that starts to create that vigilance. And so we grow up, we go through high school, all this stuff, and then we, get into our 20s and we're like, who the frick am I now that I've created all this meaning? And then we spend the rest of our lives trying to unpack that armor to find that we were the divine perfection we always were. So don't go it alone.
Yeah. And that image of that kindergartner, first grader, having their lunch taken away from them, I felt that I was being bullied when I was in elementary school. I planted my own seed in my head that I was being bullied, and not bullied in a totally nasty way, but not being accepted into a group that I wanted to be part of. Except individually, they all let me in. But the group did not let me in.
Mm,
And I'm not sure if they didn't let me in or if I hesitated to get inside.
right.
And it took me almost 50 years to realize that sometimes we do this to ourselves. I think
Hmm.
it's that armor. Something happens, and based on what we've heard and the people around us, we create this image and then we swear by it. Okay. And the day that I finally realized I had not been bullied, I had been accepted. Um, I'm in touch with many of these people on Facebook. I wrote an email to all of them saying, I am sorry,
Mm,
and I'm glad we're friends today. And whatever that was, it just lifted away from me
beautiful.
that I don't have to harbor this anymore. And when people say it's difficult to change their behavior, that's part of being in the maze. But like you said, you don't have to do it alone. You can get somebody to help guide you.
Very much. Again, nobody goes it alone. And it's also repetition. Like we can say it's hard. When we say it's hard, it will be. So I give my clients one of these.
Oh, an easy button. Absolutely. I have one
You know,
too.
because what if it wasn't? Like, and here's the thing, God forbid something tragic should happen. And then all of a sudden, we lose someone and we let go of all the past and we show up in forgiveness. So it can be changed on a dime. We say it's hard because, like you said earlier, we're still attached to the story. Don't you see? I don't have all my dreams come true because this happened to me. Don't you see? I don't make the money that I do because this happened to me. It's not my fault. I forgave, but this still happened. So I'm limited. And it's like, and so it's a safety net that we have so that we don't move forward. Because no matter where you are in life, somebody that makes 5 million a year, what do they want, Karen?
They want the same thing that you and I want.
Well, when they make 5 million, they want 10 million.
Well,
Right?
yeah.
There's always another level. There's always another like opening of the spirit. And so no matter where you are in life, you can have whatever that big audacious dream is. You can have it, right? A lot of the times I think the mantra that plays in our head, it did for me anyway, was why me? Who am I? Who am I to demand an empowered life? Who am I to want to affect change in the world? Who am I to want to create an army of angels of people that want to make impact in the world because I believe we're here to change it, right? Like, who am I? I'm just this young girl from 2 Peruvian immigrants, and the voice in my head says, who are you not to? How many people was Martin Luther King? Just one.
Yep.
How many people was Mother Teresa?
Yep.
Just one. And when you think about Martin Luther King, he had 250,000 people from all walks of life, from all areas, take buses, trains, planes, to be in the presence of his speech. What was his marketing campaign? He didn't have one. He just had a dream. He had a belief. He had a conviction. And people wanted to show up to hear him speak. That's the power that we have when we take off all of the armor and we show up in our divinity. You have a signature inside of you that was given by God, our creator, that says you are to be Karen in the beautiful way that you are meant to be it unapologetically and not like anybody else. Who was the person that said be yourself because everyone else is taken?
Yeah.
Right? It's like we're constantly comparing ourselves, taking
Absolutely.
ourselves out of the game. Gosh, comparison is the worst, right? And it's like my daughter, she's so cute. She came and she was telling me some difficult challenge she was having. And I was just like, you know what, Shayna, just be you. Oh, mom, what does that even mean? And I'm like, that's an interesting question, but just be you, just be you. And then she came back a couple of weeks later after I kept telling her that. And she comes out and she goes, Mom, I'm like, what? She goes, you know what's so great about being me? I'm like, what? She goes, I'm really good at it.
I love that.
We get to be the experts at being ourselves. We're not meant to be like anybody else. And God put a signature in your DNA for you to be exactly who you are meant to be. The problem is we believe it has to come with rules or conditions to be loved or accepted. What if you could not fail? What if you were already loved and accepted? I kind of geek out on stories of NDEs, near death experiences, because I love hearing what takes place from all these different people from all these different walks of life who share the same story.
Right, exactly.
Absolute acceptance, of feeling so omnipotent and so pure and so beautiful that they don't want to come back. Right? It's like, what if we can bring that to the now? Because the acceptance is not from your husband, from your teacher, from your children. The acceptance is from you. If you can see yourself through the lenses of God, universe, what would you see? Would you see the divinity and the beauty that you were? Or do you see all the flaws and all the mistakes? Because either way, you're right.
And as I hear that, I want to point out it's never too late in your life to find yourself and be the best you. And your best you today is going to probably be different tomorrow. And I don't think it's worth getting worried about it like, hey, look what I'm doing today. Why couldn't I do that yesterday? Okay,
Right.
you couldn't, but you're doing it today. Or boy, I did all these things yesterday and I can't do them today. Okay, but what are you doing today? When I left corporate America and made podcasting and blogging my thing, I didn't ask for acceptance. When a few people asked me, like, why do you think you should do this? My answer was because I need to,
Mm.
and left it at that. I don't have to even explain the need
Right.
because eventually those around me saw what it was doing for me.
Mm.
Saw that, here I left corporate America. I was the breadwinner in the family and I was changing our whole lifestyle.
Mhm.
And my husband and my younger son looked at me and said, bravo, because you have been miserable. And I
Yeah.
was walking around pretending I wasn't. And I looked at the two of them and I said, yes. And I'm not going to even apologize that our income is going to change. And,
What a courageous thing to do, though. You burned your boats. You said, you know what, this is my calling. And I have to honor you for that, because so many stay stuck in that corporate arena. And look, I get it. I did it for 15 and a half years and I had clumps of hair falling out in my shower. I had heart palpitations. Doctor wanted to give me beta blockers for the rest of my life. And I was like, wait a minute. So they put me on a monitor for 24 hours and they're like, yeah, we can give you beta blockers. That'll help calm your heart. And I'm like, so you want to give me a pill to stop my heart from doing that, and I should keep my stress? Not going to do it. I did not take one pill. I didn't take a prescription. I quit 2 weeks later. And again, because it's not worth it. The stress and the adrenal failing and all of these things, burnout is just so rampant. And it doesn't have to be that way. There is a calling that's greater on your heart. What if you weren't meant to fill somebody else's pocket? What if you were meant to take an answer and do the scary thing, the thing that is that dream of yours that you fantasize, but you don't really tell anybody because, well, you're handcuffed to the paycheck.
right.
There's a calling on your heart. What is that? And that's why I think we need partnership. We need somebody to be outside, because the jar can't read the outside of the label. Right. So we need to walk alongside somebody that's going to help not change us, because I don't believe it's a becoming. I believe it's an unveiling. There's an unveiling of your spirit that's calling to be answered, right? And so how can we unpack all that armor to see what's really there and why you're really here? The two most important days of your life, right? The day you were born and the day you find out why. And when you
Oh,
find out why, and you stand in alignment with that, you will be guided, you will be held, you will be abundant in ways that doesn't make sense. But as leaders, we have to be willing to step into the unknown and do the uncommon.
and I think the listeners need to understand too that being a leader doesn't really mean that we are like Martin Luther King. We are, but we don't have to have 250,000 people listening to
No.
us. And that's where a lot of people are stepping back and going, no, I'm not going to do that. Who's going to listen to me? And I remember, and I shared this in a podcast this morning. My mother and father wanted me to be a teacher. I chose not to be. After I got my associates in communications, they pulled me out of school. We're not wasting our money. And every job I took, I tried to use everything I had learned in communications. But when my son was graduating high school, I looked at him and I thought, wait a second, he's going to go on, he's going to get his bachelor's degree, maybe a master's. Wow, I only have an associate's degree. So I went back to school and not only got my bachelor's, I got my master's, and I was loving every minute of it. I absorbed everything, and that was really what helped me change, because I never felt good enough. I never felt worthy enough. And all of a sudden, I wasn't just raising my hand to volunteer so I'd be noticed. I could do things in the background, and you didn't even have to know that I did it.
Right.
But if I knew, and I think that's important to our listeners, many of us who are doing podcasting, coaching, any kind of support work, we're not doing it for the accolades. We're helping ourselves get better, but we're bringing you all along for the ride.
Well, and leadership is you can't be an effective leader if you can't lead yourself. Right. And leadership could be raising two beautiful children. You know what I mean? That could be your way of leadership. It could be, keeping your marriage alive and exciting, so there's all kinds of umbrellas. I love that you brought that up, because I don't want people to think it has to be this big grandiose dream. It can be. I just want to give you the window and the perspective of understanding that can be yours if you want it. Now, it doesn't have to be, but when that question pops up in your head, who am I? I'd love to ask a different question. Who are you not to? Right. And I think the quality of our lives is in the quality of the questions we ask ourselves. Right. If you say, why has this always happened to me? Well, that saboteur voice is going to go, let me tell you why, Jessie. No, you never follow through. You really at the ready to tell you all the things you're not. So instead, what if, what's the opportunity here for my growth or expansion? What muscle is God calling me to build in this moment? Right? Like, there's always a gift in the adversity. It's like Mr. Rogers. I love this quote. He said, back when 9/11 happened and all the children were scared because the parents are watching the news 24/7 and they're seeing this over and over and over again. He gets down at their level and tells the children, he says, you know what? Whenever there's chaos, there's always helpers. Look for the helpers. And that's such a beautiful indication of the beauty that can come from chaos, from adversity, from our pain. And it's always there. It's just the bad feels so loud, it's in our face that we can't see it, but it's always available. So asking myself, even tragic situations. I haven't shared with you yet. You read my bio and I lost my brother. I lost my other brother in November, this November.
Oh.
And having the mindset and the tools, I had to pull all of it in because he was also murdered. And so, dealing with detectives and police and people that are coming up saying that they're his, baby mama. And, like so many different things, and navigating my mom who lost now another son, and these are just my two brothers and me. I have half brothers, but this is from my mom and dad. And I had to pull in all of my teachings, ask myself the right questions, because I could feel the seduction of going down a very dark place.
Right.
Angry, frustrated, like what happened, like why, and wanting answers. And I had to really self-regulate and come back and use my tools to say, okay, God, if this is meant to be, because arguing with reality, you lose 100% of the time. Okay.
Yes, you
So
do.
if this is the reality, then I know you are trying to show me something. What is the good in this? If my brothers are meant to be gone and I'm meant to be here, what do you want from me? How do I get to show up in the context of this adversity? How am I going to turn this pain into purpose? How am I going to take this energy and do something good in the world? And I'm still mapping that out, and I want to help. I want to understand that world. I want to know what's in the mind of the man that took my brother's life. Like, what happened in your childhood? What happened in your life that caused you to believe that this was okay? Because I don't believe we're born cruel. It's something that happens as we have our evolution in our journey. And so I want to be a study of it. And maybe that's my path. I don't know, but I know that I have to ask good questions. Otherwise, the seduction to go down a dark road is very, very strong.
Absolutely. Well, last night I attended a session. I had taken a personal intelligence seminar this summer, and now we are, as a group, going through, how did the training help us? What did we get out of the training? Some of us felt we had to do exactly what we were told every week, and others, like myself, said, I'm going to hear what I'm supposed to do, but I have to make it mine, because if I do it like everybody else, I'm a robot. And last night we finally came to the conclusion that there was a reason all of us have become very good friends through this, because we have that connection, and we really help each other out when we have those questions. We're not afraid to ask them. And I think everyone can find that core, like you said, somebody who you can talk to, somebody who's not going to look at you and say, I'm sorry that both of your brothers, are gone. I'm sorry that your brother was murdered, but hey, get over it. No, we don't get over it. Okay. We find a way to work through it, to understand it, whether it's to give us comfort or to give somebody else comfort. And I applaud what you believe is maybe your next mission, because it's important to understand. I don't think, like you said, any of us are born with an evil streak in us. Somewhere along the line, something happens and it develops.
Yeah.
And maybe we just have to be more aware and be more helpful all the way through the years. And I know it's not just going to be me or just you, Jessie, out there doing it. Thank God for all the people who are out there coaching in such a positive manner. And you're right, in 2006, when somebody would have said coach, I would have said the same thing. Oh, you want me to coach my son's soccer team? Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Tell my listeners how they can find you, how they can connect with you.
Sure. I'd love to preface before I dive into that if you seek me out and you have a desire to work with me, that you be ready, right? You be ready to take it all off, take it all off. And you'll read on my website that, like, if you're needing to hold on to the story, and there's no judgment, like, you might need to another year, I don't know. But if you're going to work with me, you have to be willing to let that go. You have to be willing to be raw and vulnerable and we're going to unveil all of the things that are getting in your way. So you really, really, really need to want transformation. Because if we just come in for, this isn't a rah, just, get excited and do some affirmations. This is a no, we're going to break down the barriers that have been built in the heart armor. And we're going to come back to the divinity of who we are so that you can live unleashed, uncaged, and fulfill your potential. So if that's you and you're ready to dive in and go deep, because I go to those places that you have been told, leave it in the past. And I'm not going there, by the way, to hang out. I'm just going there to acknowledge the beautiful soul in the arena of your life. And I'm going to help you recognize that you no longer need to be in the arena, but I want you to pull the gifts of the beautiful soul that went through it. Okay? Because it's not about what happened. It's about the beautiful person on the other side of what happened. And let's anchor those things, because that is the beauty of you. And I'm entrusted, I'm appreciating your trust in me to do that. And we'll go there, and trust me when I tell you, you will feel like you lost 10 pounds, because you feel so light, and you feel like, oh my God, I don't have to be shackled by these belief systems anymore. I didn't even know they were there. And that's something that's really important. Sometimes we think we've done a lot of work, or we forgave, but we really didn't forgive. Because I have a process to forgiveness that requires you to not only forgive yourself, forgive the person, but to find the gift. And now that might seem harsh for some people who might have been raped, or what do you mean? There's no gift in that. There is. There's a beautiful, strong, courageous, powerful woman that came out the other side. So trust me when I tell you, it's a journey, but if you're willing to take it, I promise you, you will come back home to the divinity that you already are. So my website is unshakablelife.com. You can go on there. There's a video you can watch, a webinar, and it'll show you, it'll walk through a process of trauma. My 3 aspects are passion, purpose, and impact. I don't just want you to walk away transformed. I want you to utilize it in transforming the world. Now, that doesn't mean you have to go on stage and speak and do all these things. To me, transformation of the world starts with being kind to the Starbucks lady. An act of kindness is what I believe saved my life. In a moment where I was wishing and praying that I could die, this person acted kind to me, and I didn't know what that was. I had been told from my dad, everybody wants to get in your pants, because that's what he was doing. And I was told by my husband, you know what, Jess, people want to subconsciously break up a good marriage, so don't talk about our marriage to anybody. So everybody was cruel before. So when these people acted kind, it short-circuited me. I didn't understand. You were just being kind and you don't want anything in return. I don't understand this. But what I knew is whatever little fizzle was alive in me, the spark just happened. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but if this feeling is available, then life is worth living. And that's the impact that each one of you can have. Just by showing up in the world differently, just by being kind, just by smiling, just by saying the things that most of the time we eat, right? You think something really nice about somebody in the store, and then you walk away and you never tell them. Why? Go share it. You know, my daughter started to do these random acts of kindness with these 2 little girls she was babysitting. And this little 5-year-old was so excited. She couldn't wait. They would go walk to the little area in a little shopping mall, and she would have her picture, paint a picture, and then they would go have lunch, and she'd have to pick somebody that she could give it to. And I was telling my daughter, you know what you're creating in that little girl? Because of course she gives the gift to somebody sitting having lunch with their partners, and they're like, thank you. And they get all excited. So she literally is feeling the gift of giving. A little picture she painted. You know what I mean? That is how we transform the world. It doesn't mean you have to be Martin Luther King. We have impact right now in this moment, because you never know what chaos is going on in people's lives.
You are so right. Well, we're going to have all your information in the show notes. So for those of you listening, there's no excuse to say, hey, I didn't know how to get through to Jessie. And as she said, if you're not ready right now, hold on to her information, contact her when you are. I will also tell you that many people work with multiple coaches for multiple areas of their life. So as a coach advocate, if you're looking for someone give us a call or email us at New Cleveland Radio. I'll give you a list of wonderful people just like Jess, and you get the chance to talk to them and find out, hey, are you right for me or not? And if they're not, move on. Jess, thanks so much for joining us. Our love and support to you as you continue to move through, and we'll have you on again in the future, okay?
Sounds wonderful, Karen. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye.